Hey guys, Fitness Science here. I am going to do a reaction video to one of my favorite YouTubers in the fitness industry, who is called Josh Bridgman. Now, I think everyone should be sub to him because he is a huge influence in the fitness industry in a positive way, mainly because he's so honest about his journey. He is an open book in terms of steroid use. He puts everything out there on social media. He doesn't hide away from the fact that the physique he has built has come from steroids, as well as obviously a lot of hard work, but steroids as an enhancer to his physique. And he doesn't hide away from the honest truth that to build a physique worthy of stepping on a professional bodybuilding stage to earn an IFBB pro card, you need to take steroids. Yeah, he doesn't hide away from that. I think the way he approaches this is so much better than lying to people, because when you lie to young, easily influenced boys and girls who may be thinking of getting to this physique one day, you're effectively denying them the education they need to be able to understand what to do properly. No matter what you do, it's medically taboo to take steroids. There's never going to be much education about steroid use, but lying to people and letting them figure out that they can't get there naturally, and then, okay, I have to take steroids, so I don't know anything about steroids, so I'm just going to experiment, is way more dangerous than educating them. I think that's way safer than these magazines and these people in the fitness industry who are obviously not natural but are lying to people that they are. They're just opening the door for people experimenting to try and get there without actually knowing what they're doing. So Josh's approach of being totally honest, here's what I'm doing, here's how to do it, here are the health implications you need to be aware of, I think is a huge positive. Can't wait to get into this video, and let's do it.
What's up everybody, and welcome back to another video, something slightly different. I really wanted to delve into these points in the title of this, but before we do, I just want to highlight that I am not a doctor. I do not endorse the use of anything illegal. I do not wish to encourage. I really just want to give you my experience and some slight education as to the things that can go wrong with using anabolic steroids. So in this video, I'm going to talk about some of the things that I face personally, but also some of the things that I know that other people are facing, and some things that I know that people can actually help themselves a little bit, and how we can mitigate it. So first and foremost, if you ever meet a bodybuilder who says they have perfect blood work, I would probably say they're either a genetic freak or they're lying. We know that anabolic steroids are going to have an effect on your kidneys, your liver, your cholesterol, even things like if you're using growth hormone and insulin, your HbA1c over a 90-day period of how your blood glucose is. All of these things can be skewed. You can see my blood work on screen right now. It is not perfect. There are reds everywhere. These are things that you need to consider when you're...
So with kidney health, we know that anabolic steroids increase muscle protein synthesis, and obviously as a result of that, also breakdown. Creatinine is a byproduct of this process, and creatinine is often elevated even in people who don't use steroids but just train hard. It will be elevated. Now, the EGFR is estimated glomerular filtration rate. This is a formula because it's estimated and it's based on creatinine, which weighs heavily into it. When creatinine is this high, that obviously has a huge weighting and will falsely suppress the EGFR. It's not to say that Josh's kidneys are not doing their job, but it is saying that because of the creatinine, the EGFR, I mean, it's just a formula basically that will weight heavily the creatinine, and therefore the EGFR is like. There is some evidence to show that anabolic steroids do induce kidney damage, especially in rats with high doses, but this was done over a 12-month period. The reason why kidney health is so important is that when the glomeruli in the kidneys are damaged, that's it. You can't undamage them, so to speak. Once they have damage in terms of atrophy or fibrosis, or they change shape in such a way that they can't revert back to their normal shape, that's it. You can't reverse the process, and that's why chronic kidney disease is so debilitating for patients, and why they will have to go through dialysis every week or month or whatever it is, because once the kidneys are damaged, you can't realistically you can't get back your glomeruli function without getting a kidney transplant, basically. So kidney health is a huge thing to be aware of for bodybuilders. And obviously, in terms of cycle design, you don't want to be exposing yourself to huge amounts of androgens for years and years, because your kidneys will be damaged. And once they're damaged, unfortunately, that's it. Unless you get a transplant. But you want to avoid that as much as possible, obviously.
Taking steroids that you may not be a 100% in the range.
ALT high here. as well. ALT is a liver enzyme which is involved in a lot of processes, one of which is breaking down proteins. So often bodybuilders will have a high ALT just because of the protein breakdown that has to go on in terms of not only their diet but also the protein synthesis that's going on in the body. That will often be elevated. SHBG here low as well. SHBG, because it's a regulating mechanism for normal androgens in our body when we're natural, when it loses the ability to regulate androgens because there are so many floating around in the blood, it will lose its ability to regulate, and therefore here it's low, which means nothing is bound to it because there's just so much free androgens floating around in the blood. It's lost its ability to regulate. Again, you don't want to be in this period for years and years and years because unregulated androgens will negatively impact your health.
Listen, not to say you can't be, I'm sure you can be. Obviously, a lot of these results.
Cholesterol, as we know, HDL, which is good cholesterol, is crashed in androgen exposure, and LDL, which doesn't actually look too bad here. It is at the higher end of the reference range here, but still within reference range, but typically LDL will increase. And this was something very prominent in an extreme case in Dallas McCarver, who had very crashed HDL levels and dyslipidemia with a huge spike in LDL. And unfortunately, this was enough to cause a heart attack in him at the age of just 27. I think Josh is around 27, but yeah, to die of a heart attack at 27 should never happen. And I think the rate is like 0.1% of people, of males, die of a heart attack at 27 years old. So yeah, it's not meant to happen usually. If this is not regulated, it will be a huge thing later on in terms of heart attack risk and just general plaque development in your coronary arteries. The coronary arteries are not very wide. So that's one downfall of the human body, is that the coronary arteries, if we could redesign the body again, we'd have huge coronary arteries that were like this wide in diameter, but they're not, unfortunately, which means plaque development is something that you want to avoid because it's very easy, if you don't take care of your lipids, to have plaque development and block that coronary artery, and that's not good. That's heart attack time, basically.
Also, when I'm high on cycle, and they do recover on TRT, but this is something that you need to consider. You also need to understand that the long-term impact of spending time in the red is probably accumulative. If you're in the red, is it going to kill you right there and then? No, but the more time you spend in the red, and by red I mean in
It's very true. It's not going to kill you immediately, but chronic exposure over years and years and decades will negatively impact your health. There are things that we just can't get around, like heart attack risk, and some of the things that are in the blood as well, hematocrit and the thickness and viscosity of blood, hemoglobin, which also not only increase the risk of heart attack, but stroke and thrombus form. So these are things that you need to keep on top of too.
Reference ranges of your blood work that are out of where they should be recommended. The more time you spend there, the more ability, the more probability you have of heart conditions, all steroid-associated issues are more likely to happen the longer you spend those periods of time. Another thing...
It's exactly right, and Josh often talks about revving your engine too high. You're in the red zone, you're at the limiter. You can't keep a car there forever. You can't keep our engine, which is our heart and our kidneys and our organs and our entire musculoskeletal system, in that red zone forever, because something will fail. It's about doing it as safely as possible, and I think Josh is a huge proponent of the minimal effective dose to get there. Young guys who are out there who are thinking of getting to this physique, you don't need to be taking huge grams of stuff per week. Minimal effective dose and work your way up from there. Josh doesn't use much, but he uses enough to get to where he wants to go as healthy as possible. It's not going to be the healthiest thing to do in life, but he has a goal and he wants to get to that goal. So how do you get to that goal without impacting your life? Because, living is all we have. So you want to do it as safely as possible to reach your goal. You don't want to kill yourself. Unfortunately, we've seen many deaths. One of the most tragic was Dallas at 27. He had a goal, but he just pushed it too hard. He wanted to get there too quickly, and he pushed it way too hard, and look what happened. He died of a heart attack at 27, tragically. It's so important. You need to be on this. You need to be on your blood. You need to be looking at your blood and analyzing what's going on, understanding the biomarkers, and really understanding that you need to take care of what's going on inside your body, because it's a huge indicator of your longevity and health.
Another issue that I've had personally is I've had heart palpitations, and I've had to get a few cardiograms and ECGs, echocardiograms, to get a scan of my heart, as I felt like I was having thousands per week. Thousands and thousands it felt like I was having. It actually turned out to not be that, and I'm actually fine now. I had 2 heart scans, I had an ECG, I had a ambulatory heart monitor on for a week and everything all checked out fine. But these are the reality of these things, is that they're going to generate a little bit of paranoia in you. Oh, what was that? Oh, what was this? Or it could be this. And that's something that probably a lot of people don't think of and don't talk about publicly, is that when they do have an issue internally, maybe they have and you're like high cycle 2 weeks out and you're like, oh, it's my kidney hurting, and you're just going to ignore it because of whatever. Like, it's a real thing. You think about every little nook and cranny that hurts. You're like, is that associated with this? Is it going to snap? Is it going to be this? For me personally, like, obviously you learn to deal with those issues and it doesn't become as much of an issue the longer you do it, but it's a very real thing that I think a lot of bodybuilders go through. Not only that, but the actual injection.
It's so true, because we know that anabolic steroids induce ventricular wall thickness as a result of the heart being a muscle itself. So androgen exposure will increase your skeletal muscle as well as your heart tissue muscle itself. And the Purkinje fibers, which run through the left ventricle, are actually responsible for delivering the electrical current to the heart muscle to depolarize and actually beat effectively. Now, when the heart muscle itself is thickened, these fibers get sort of disarrayed and pushed around, and they sort of cross over each other, and when those fibers are in disarray, that is when you start to get electrical abnormalities. And one of the most common things and one of the most risky things in anabolic steroid is heart failure as a result of left ventricular wall thickness and sudden cardiac death. When the wall is very thick, like Dallas McCarver's heart was 3 times larger than normal and he had a huge left ventricle wall. This is when you start to get electrical abnormalities and arrhythmias as a result of just the heart not being able to beat and pump and deliver electricity through its fibers as effectively. This is something that not many people know about, but is so important, because you don't want a thick heart. You need to keep your heart supple and it beats in a very organized pattern. And if you upset this organized pattern of beating and depolarization and repolarization of the heart, that's when you start to get problems. And you don't want a thick heart, and you don't want to mess up the electrical equilibrium of the heart itself. One of the ways you keep on top of this is by getting regular echocardiograms of your heart to see how it's beating and how it's pumping, as well as electrocardiograms to see whether your left ventricle is hypertrophied or not, because this will show up very clearly. When your left ventricle is hypertrophied, you get a huge QRS complex, which will show that the wave of depolarization going through the heart is huge, and the amount of muscle mass that's undergoing depolarization is enormous. It'll show up as a big spike, so it's very easily seen. And yeah, it's definitely something you want to avoid. It's exacerbated by the fact that bodybuilders undergo a lot of resistance training, and resistance training through pressure overload is a concentric stress on the heart and will concentrically hypertrophy the heart itself. So they're getting it from the drugs as well as the training. This is why bodybuilders' hearts typically are very large, and definitely something that you want to avoid as much as possible by keeping on top of it and not abusing the drugs themselves.
And the oils that you're using, this is a brutal reality. This picture right here of what can go wrong. And this was just a poor substance in a wrong position of my leg, and my leg blew up to twice as.
Especially because bodybuilders obviously not getting this prescribed, or very rarely getting this prescribed. So often it is, you don't actually know what you're getting and injecting into yourself. So infections do happen, especially when the processes of however it was made might not be completely sanitary. Unfortunately, it's a reality that this stuff can happen.
So I was worried I'm going to have to get amputated. The doctor was just like, what is going on here? Gave me antibiotics. They weren't working very well. And that's the reality, is that you're probably going to end up getting underground lab stuff, and you're probably going to get bad information as to where to inject. That was just the wrong injection for me. I put it in my piriformis, which is mental, but I got that from someone I trusted, so I believed it, and it absolutely destroyed me. But you know, another thing is actually getting fake gear. Like, it's a real thing when it's not legalized. People say they get pharma grade 2. Only blood work can tell. I've had clients and myself, I've had gear that's been told me that it's X amount of milligrams, and you know, according to my blood work, it's putting me low. That tells me that there's not as what it says on the tin. So that's another harsh reality of steroids, is that you can't always guarantee, and as many tests as their batch has been through, and as many people has recommended it, there's always that slight, is it real? And that's gonna be real until you know you've pulled out of the hospital, and no one wants to do that because of the people who need it. Another thing that I think probably isn't as wide spoken about is the psychological change. Now, I don't think it's this huge roid rage monster that people make out. There's no, you know, I'm sure there are people who have reacted really, really badly, and you know, different compounds notoriously may trigger things a little bit more psychologically than others. However, for me, it just enhanced those things a little bit. I'm not notoriously, but I don't have the best patience at the best times. If people aren't deducing the conversation, I get a little bit snappy sometimes. It just enhances that a little bit more. That's what
Yeah, I think this is 100% right. It just turns the volume up on whatever traits you may have already. It will just turn that up, from 7 to 10, for example. And it's hard because it's so different between everyone. Everyone will react differently. But certain compounds as well are different as well, like Josh says here. But it can be, you can lose a lot through it if your personality is not geared towards here.
I'm on cycle, I noticeably feel a little bit more on edge. I remember reading something, I think it was either grey or white matter. I'm going to say the grey matter gets decreased when you're using steroids, which is like your reactionary time. So even things like light or sharp noises you can lead to a sharper reaction, and maybe that's just what happens, is that your reactions just get increased. But I think naturally, if you're a calm person, you're still going to be that calm person. There's one thing that I was afraid of when I began my PD use was, am I going to change as a person? Am I going to get that roid rage day in, day out? That's not how it works. I'm still fine. I can still have a laugh. I think maybe you just react to things a little bit more when you're in the peak, let alone when you're in a deficit for a pro card and you're doing this cardio and this stress and running businesses. It's very stressful anyway. So I think that just turning up the dial a little bit more can go a long way, even though that it might not have such a big effect on someone as maybe who's super chill out, doesn't have as much stress, and then you put in PDs, they might not have that huge reaction like other people do. So I think
and we know that steroids as well increase noradrenaline and adrenaline signaling, as well as its production completely. So just having that increased sympathetic drive can often put people in that fight or flight response, and it can induce that fight or flight response just because your adrenaline is higher and your sympathetic drive is higher. So blood pressure increases as a result of this, and it can just really change the way that you interact with people and go through your relationships in life, just because you're in a bit more of a heightened state and you're a bit more reactive to things, and your stimulus for sympathetic drive is obviously higher, so it doesn't take that much more to push you over into fight or flight.
I think another impact that a lot of people probably don't talk about is, actually probably a lot of people just don't do, and I think a lot of people could avoid some of these side effects that they're going to get, like gyno, like high blood pressure, like acne, like bad skin, all those other, standard reactions or side effects of steroids, I think can be managed through managing their health through blood work.
I totally agree. Blood pressure is something that typically will increase on cycle as a result of the increased stimulus, as well as the adrenaline and noradrenaline signaling, as well as certain components in the RAS. Now, this is the key regulating mechanism behind our blood pressure. Certain compounds in that RAS system can increase because of androgen exposure. So definitely something to look out for, high blood pressure, because high blood pressure will kill you. There's no question about it that it does increase the risk of heart attack, stroke. So there was a study done where they took young people and analyzed each 1 millimeter of mercury increase in blood pressure over the course of the life, and it showed up that the guys who had perfect blood pressure at about 115 to 120 had a much decreased risk of later incidents of heart attack and stroke later in life, as opposed to the guys who were 130, 140, 150 systolic and 90, 100, 110 diastolic. So definitely blood pressure is something that you need to keep on track of, and if you need to fix it, there are ways to fix it, such as angiotensin receptor blockers, such as calcium channel blockers, such as beta blockers. All these different things work well.
And the realistic reason why people don't do their blood work and maybe don't hire a coach to do their cycles is the financial implication. Now, the financial implication of using steroids, it may not be a lot for some, but for...
And also, I think some people, honestly, that they just don't want to know. Like, there are some steroid users out there who just are scared to know, which is a really bad thing, because, you need to know. But I think they just turn a blind eye and think that they're young, it won't affect them. They don't want to know what's going on. They're just going to use it and, forget about the health side. But definitely something that you should not be doing.
For me, I said in my last video, or one of my last videos, it's a minimum of £200 a month for a big cycle. Granted, when you're on TRT or cruising, it's not as it's pittance. It's 30 quid a month maybe, just to keep yourself where you need to be. If you've got to understand it, if you wanted to use other things like growth hormone, that's another £150. That's already £350. Then then you think, okay, there's other things like I actually need these supplements to keep my liver, heart and kidneys and cholesterol in check. You know, that's another 120 pounds. So now you're looking at 400 pounds. Actually, you need a blood test probably every 4 to 8 weeks. That's 100 pounds. So you're adding on another 50 pounds per month there. So that's already 450, 500 pounds a month that you're dedicating towards this extracurricular activity, let alone, you know, different prices and different gears and whatever. So the financial implication is something that probably people don't think about, and they think, oh, I'm going to run a cycle and get massive. But not knowing that you have to sustain that for a long period of time, like, do you have £3,000 a year to give towards steroids, or more, 4,000, 5,000 pounds to give towards steroids? If you don't in the long term and you've got a family to provide for, you know, you've got to think about that long term, and I don't think people are. So this is my little...
And not only that, but if you get into it thinking that the financial side of things you can manage, and then suddenly your circumstances change and you can't, then you're going to have a really bad time, because once you stop cold turkey, say you're forced to stop cold turkey as a result of a financial implication or something like that, and you can't afford PCT drugs, which are, you know, more expense on top of that, you're going to have a pretty bad time recovering, and it's going to be hell for at least a good 6 to 12 months. And in some studies it can even take up to 18 months to regain full testicular function of normal endogenous hormone production. So some people think 18 months is a huge amount of time, and you can understand why people just give up and they just blast and cruise forever, or they just stay on a TRT dose forever because they don't want to wait 18 months for it to come back, for your natural levels to come back. So if you are thinking of taking steroids your first cycle, you can't go into it on a whim. It can be a lifelong decision. It really can be. So you just don't go into it on a whim and then think you can just do it for a little bit and come off again. It doesn't work like that. You need to be so careful of this, and Josh has explained it well here. I really like the way he's explained this in terms of the financial implication, but also the fact that this can be for life. This can be the rest of your life, you know, from that first injection, or however you take testosterone or any other anabolic steroid, can be for life. So you need to be so careful.
Snapshot on it. There's plenty more implications. There's plenty more side effects that are associated with steroids. You know, even more so when you're looking at orals and things like that. But those are videos that we can do later down the line, depending how this is received. YouTube is notoriously a little bit hesitant with these videos, but we'll see how it goes, guys. If you enjoyed this video, drop a like, drop a comment, and
Okay, and that's the video. I think that's touched on a few good points, especially about how to manage side effects on steroids. I think the biggest takeaways from this is always monitoring your blood work, like religiously. You need to know what's going on, understanding what's going on, and getting organ scans. It's very, very difficult to use steroids and selectively use them to get a goal on the musculoskeletal side of things that isn't going to impact organs, because it's all interrelated. Your organs are interrelated with your muscles, and the way that your muscles grow are through growth factors made from organs and made from androgens, and everything's interrelated. So organ health is huge that you need to look out for. So get organ scans, understand what's going on with your organs. I would say a heart scan every 12 months if you're a steroid user. Understanding what's going on, get calcium score tests, get a echocardiogram, get an ECG, get even a coronary artery scan. All these things you need to do. And the third thing is that this can be for life. So please be careful. Understand that it can be for life. If you take the first shot, that can be for life from then. If you want more videos like this, please let me know. The main idea behind my channel, of course, is giving you guys the physiological pathways and the biochemical pathways and the physiology and the anatomy, the literature and the science behind all things fitness to help you reach your goals in a healthy and safe manner. So yeah, let me know. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I think Josh is a huge inspiration in the fitness industry, and someone who recognizes that he needs to use certain things to reach his goal, but also recognizes that there's a way to do it safely, and also recognizes that educating people about this is way better than lying to people and letting them figure it out on their own and potentially negatively impacting their health. So big props to Josh Bridgman for this video, and big props to the education that he provides. And yeah, that's it from me. I hope to see you next video, and please, if you've enjoyed this video, consider subscribing. I've got like 11 subscribers at the moment, but look, we have to start somewhere, right? So I'm pretty sure one of them is a bot, and then 10 others are people that I know, family and friends. So yeah, we're starting from rock bottom here, but look, it's not going to stop me from trying. And yeah, I hope you've enjoyed, guys, and I will see you next video.